Hi, I'm Clare Fletcher, an MPhil candidate at UNSW. I'd like to thank the Australian Centre for Astrobiology and BHP for supporting this project. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we are all participating today. The Pilbara is a region of northwestern Australia. The 3.48 to 3.35 billion year old stromatolite fossils are located in and around the North Pole Dome, which is a geological region located about 35 kilometres west of Marble Bar and 100 kilometres south of Port Hedland. Stromatolite fossils were first described in 1980 by M. Walter, J.S.R. Dunlop and R. Buick in Nature, and by Don Lowe from an additional locality also in Nature. Since then, additional research has confirmed their biogenicity, most recently through the work of Baumgartner et al. 2019. Currently, these fossils constitute the earliest, most convincing evidence of life on Earth. They are important not only because they inform us about the rise and evolution of life on Earth, but because they also offer a unique insight into what to look for and where life might be found on other planets, such as Mars. In fact, they have long been used as a Mars analogue site by NASA and the European Space Agency in the search for life on Mars, most recently in a field trip in 2019 by rover science mission teams. As such, the stromatolite fossils are of great scientific importance and heritage value. Additionally, they are of universal heritage value as they represent the precursor to all life on planet Earth and represent our earliest ancestors. The value of these fossils is maintained in situ when their context and relationship to surrounding geology can be viewed, but this is significantly diminished when they are removed from their contextual setting to sit on a collector's shelf. The unique geoheritage value is being lost, however, due to indiscriminate collecting of pieces of what are small, isolated, and extremely rare outcrops that contain enough information and excellent exposure where the full story of their history can be observed. Current conservation is inadequate, and so alternative avenues for more significant conservation are being investigated to ensure that these fossils are maintained and their value is preserved for future generations. Throughout the 40-year history of knowing about the Pilbara stromatolites, there have been several efforts to conserve the fossils. The first of these was in 1987 in a report prepared by J.D. Carter for the Geological Survey of Western Australia. At the time, the recommended level of conservation was as a Class 1 outline monument. The Class 1 refers to the international importance of the site. Outline monument was recommended over monument due to the relative lack of information about the sites. A monument was defined by Carter as sites which have outstanding and unique significance and contribute to the physical heritage of the country. Both outline monuments and monuments were recommended to be added to the Register of National Estate, now closed. The key reason cited for the conservation of the stromatolite fossils was indiscriminate collection. This is still the key issue faced by the Pilbara fossils, and there is no longer a lack of information about the sites. However, the advice from this report, which was published only 7 years after the initial description of the oldest fossils from the Buick locality, was not enacted. The second attempt to conserve the Pilbara stromatolites was through a report by R.T. Wells for the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN. This report put the stromatolite fossils on an indicative list for UNESCO World Heritage listing. Although this was not a firm recommendation, the reason for this listing was cited as being the stromatolites are the oldest known fossils, making them key to understanding the origin of life on Earth and an important part of Earth's history. Given that there are no other fossils of the same age, quality, and proven biogenicity, this value remains. This recommendation was also not enacted. While these two efforts failed, a successful conservation attempt was made in 2003, adding the Buick stromatolite locality and the Oromik microfossil locality to the Register of National Estate. However, no management practices were established. Though sites on the register had legal protections, with no one to enforce this, the issues that plagued the North Pole Dome continued. The register was then closed in 2007 after a number of legislative changes to create the Commonwealth Heritage List and the National Heritage List. However, for reasons that remain unclear, these sites were not transferred to the National Heritage List and so remained unprotected. Currently, there are 6 stromatolite sites listed as Geoheritage Reserves vested in the Western Australian Minister for Mines and Petroleum. In theory, this affords the sites some protection. For example, licenses have to be granted to collect material and permission must be attained to access the sites. Any significant mining development will also be flagged for the Minister's approval. However, collection of important samples from the key fossil sites has not ceased. The original site of Dunlop experienced so much indiscriminate collecting that it no longer exists. Although legally these sites are protected, this has not translated to effective or actual protection due to the remoteness of these sites, where people can do as they please. The remoteness of the North Pole Dome has worked against these sites. Rather than deterring people from visiting because of the difficulty of getting there, the remoteness favours those who illegally take material not getting prosecuted. Conservation of the fossils is complicated by the variety of stakeholders in the area. Currently, the stromatolite fossil sites are managed by the Department of Mines, Industry Regulation and Safety. However, if added to the Western Australian Government's plan for our parks, the responsibility for their conservation will reside with the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions. Surrounding these reserves is a combination of pastoral leases and unallocated Crown land. The local Indigenous group, the Malcol people, are a key stakeholder as the traditional custodians of this land. The Marble Bar community is also a key stakeholder, in particular because of the potential tourism increase with further conservation efforts. Other stakeholders to consider and consult with include space agencies such as NASA, the European Space Agency and the Japanese Space Agency, and various mining companies operating in the area. In order to further the cause for greater protection of the Pilbara fossils, a letter has been written to the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions that outlines the importance of these sites and that documents the damage over the past decade or more. This letter includes support letters from dozens of eminent scientists from around the world, petitioning for the North Pole Dome sites of Buick, Oromik and Trendle to be added, together with the Meenthina site to the east of Marble Bar, in the new Western Australian Plan for Our Parks initiative, which outlines the addition of 5 million hectares over 5 years for national parks. The inclusion of these sites on the main list is still being determined, but they have been included on the reserve list, a very significant first step. Moving forward, the vision for the Pilbara fossils is one of both geoconservation and effective on-the-ground management. If the petition for the addition of these sites to the Plan for Our Parks initiative succeeds, that would represent a major step forward, with protection within the State Parks and Wildlife Service. The vision for these sites also includes a combined research and rangers station with the potential to become a visitor information and discovery centre that combines science on the origin of life and Indigenous history and tellings. We have developed a relationship with the Heritage Officer of the Malcol, who has been in full support of conservation efforts via an Indigenous Rangers program. A further step is to submit a National Heritage Listing application in 2021, which will afford the sites additional legal protection. It may also bring more tourists, however, which poses a problem that requires a more detailed plan. Critically, in any planning, there must be no development without a plan for on-site permanent protection of the sites. Currently, there is no security of any type at these sites, aside from a single small sign at the Trendle locality, informing that the site is a Geoheritage Reserve vested in the Minister for Mines and Petroleum. While UNESCO listing is being considered for the Pilbara fossils under the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act 1999, UNESCO sites are not afforded any additional protections compared to national heritage sites. Given the extended timeline of creating a UNESCO site, this is being considered as a long-term goal and not one achievable nor to be pursued in the near future. Another avenue being pursued is public-private partnerships. These partnerships are necessary for effective management of sites, as government funding contributes little to on-the-ground management. Over the 40-year history of the Pilbara stromatolite fossils, from discovery to present, these sites have been constantly left behind where conservation is concerned. To ensure that no more damage is done to the fossils, a roadmap, to be agreed upon by multiple stakeholders, is being produced, outlining the steps forward for both the short and long-term conservation of the sites. Enacting each of these steps as soon as possible will ensure that the sites remain in the best possible condition for future generations to study and learn from. I now invite anyone present who would like to be involved to get in contact. Thank you.